Welcome back. The Namibia National Students Organization, NANSO, is deeply committed to promoting equitable access to quality education for all learners in Namibia. One critical aspect of achieving this goal is ensuring that no learner faces discrimination during the school enrollment process. Discrimination during enrollment perpetuates inequality and hinders the development of a just and inclusive education system. To share more on this is Thandi Wendlovu, NANSO Secretary for Gender, Disability, Marginalized Communities and Social Welfare. Thandi, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Talk to us about how prevalent discrimination is in Namibian schools and what are some of the most common forms of discrimination that students face?
Okay, so I like to think of discrimination in two folds. There is one where we see that the discrimination is quite clear and something that you can pinpoint, and at the same time we see that learners tend to face discrimination in a manner that one could sort of call subtle or is often sort of hidden in rules and in policies and regulations of the school, which we find to be quite problematic. So such a thing would be, number one, when we look at the enrollment process in certain schools, we think that it is not right that schools primarily select learners only on basis of academic merit. So that is to say that during this enrollment process, it is important that we also look at other things outside of academics, things such as sports activities, other things such as what does this learner or this student bring to the school. That's one such an example of discrimination. But also above that, we think that as NANSO, one of the things that concerns us is discrimination that happens when learners come from disadvantaged backgrounds. We see this very often when learners are unable to afford school fees. You come to school with wrong school shoes, you're sent home, wrong uniform, you're sent home, and that is something that we've identified to be a problem. But also above that, when we look at the hairstyles in schools, we think that this is something that we've constantly highlighted as NANSO, and we continue to speak about it, and this is the hairstyle policies in schools. Why this is problematic, it is because when schools tell you, for example, as a black child that your natural afro hair is a problem, that sends a message that your inherent nature of your hair is something that is not deemed okay, and that you should perhaps relax it, and we think that that's a problem. We think that also it is unfair when for example, a black learner is sent home because their hair is above 2 centimeters, while as other kids can have their hair up to 10 centimeters. So those are just some of the few things that we're talking about when we're speaking of discrimination in schools.
What measures has NANSO taken to address discrimination in schools, and of course, what progress have you made by doing this?
Okay. Firstly, I think that the progress that we've made is significant, but allow me to highlight the measures that we've taken. So I think the major way in which we deal with these issues as NANSO is on a case-to-case basis. We hear the issue from whether it's from a learner or from a school, and then we try and see how we can solve or resolve that issue depending on the case that is currently happening at that point. Two, it is coming up with policies and seeing how we can channel this to government, because we believe that this is not an issue that can be solved by government alone, but we believe that as NANSO, because we are so much on the ground and we experience and we see these things, we're able to come up with policies that we believe can address these issues and channel them up to government level. For example, the hairstyle policy, NANSO a few years ago, I think 2018 if I'm not mistaken, drafted this policy and made the submission to government, and which allowed it to be implemented. But also above that, I think one of the greatest ways in which we play a role as NANSO is our call to action. We have a very clear mandate, and we've called upon government, we've called upon schools, institutions of higher learning to say that this is what we stand for and this is what ought to happen. How can we work towards achieving this goal?
How do you go about supporting these learners that have faced discrimination? Do you offer them, counseling services or connect them, to therapists, etc.?
So again, as NANSO, we usually try to see how we can work on these things on a case-to-case basis. We provide, whether it's emotional support with that would be to say that if a student comes to us, this is the challenge that they are facing, we can channel them to the right person. If it's a psychologist that they need, we try and see where can we get someone who's willing to do this work pro bono and link them with that person. We have various connections, and we always work together with our different stakeholders in order to provide a solution for the matter at hand. But also as NANSO, we have tried to really establish relationships, so to say that if it is a case where the person needs legal support, we're able to assist that. Last year, NANSO also launched its hotline where learners and students can contact us if they need help with anything, then we're able to address them. Whether it's challenges that they face in school, whether it's challenges that they face at home, even if it's cases of abuse at home or anything that there's nothing that we think is too big for us to solve, because if it's something that I can't solve as the Secretary for Gender, for example, I would be able to connect this learner to the relevant person who's able to assist with this.
Talk to us about the role students themselves can play, in creating a more inclusive educational environment, and how the association, of course, helps to facilitate this.
So with students, what we've noticed as NANSO is a lot of times some of these things that contribute to discrimination may not be things that students want to do. It may be things that they do perhaps out of ignorance. So a lot of times you find that these jokes that they make, or these discrimination come in forms of jokes where they think that they're just playing around, where they think that it's okay to say what they're saying and it's not. So what we think as NANSO is that when we go out there and we educate these learners, they're able to make better decisions in society. So one of the ways in which we play a part as NANSO is by going out to different schools and speaking to learners about things such as bullying, for example, things such as racism. We speak to them about things such as discrimination. We have one-on-one conversations with learners, and that way they are able to relearn and unlearn the wrong things that they've learned. So we think that students can play a role in by being informed. That's number one, but also by creating an environment that's acceptive to people who are different from them, to people who do not necessarily conform to things that they are used to. So I think that's the way in which that students and learners can play their role, by just being acceptive and also by being cognizant of your environment.
Tandiwe, talk to us about the organization's long-term vision for creating a discrimination-free education system in Namibia.
Okay. NANSO remains firm in what it stands for. What we as NANSO want to achieve is that no Namibian learner should ever be denied their fundamental right of access to education. So that is to say that under no circumstances should there be any form of discrimination, whether it's because of your race, whether it's because of your gender, whether it's because of your economic situation. So as NANSO, what we want to see is a Namibia where every Namibian child can access education, and that there is no form of discrimination that they face in the schools, whether it's that they perhaps have different religious beliefs, different gender, sex, and all of those stuff. We think that what we really channel our energy to doing is really to ensuring that none of these things hinder the Namibian child in accessing education.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tandiwe Ndlovu, who is NANSO's Secretary for Gender, Disability, Marginalized Communities and Social Welfare, speaking to us there. We'll be right back.